what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed.
What up, y'all? This your boy Devontae 3000. Today we are watching Trying to Not Get Scared challenge. So we watching 5 videos and we are not trying to get scared. Y'all know what's up. And we're going to rate it to a 1 to a 10 how scared it is. So let's begin.
So this story takes place when I was about 16 years old. At my school, I played for the volleyball team, and every year we would go to a camp and do volunteer work for this guy. The camp was in the middle of nowhere. When we got to the camp, we immediately started to work until 8 p.m. This was around October, so it was already dark at 8. My 2 friends and I were sitting around the fire, trying to figure out something we could do so we weren't so bored. We heard that there was a small river down the hill from the camp, and we thought we could check it out. The problem is that it was some guy's property, and the owner of the camp told us to not disturb him since the guy was a little strange. We weren't really supposed to leave the camp, but being 16 years old, we loved breaking the rules. We walked about 10 minutes from the camp and finally reached the river. It was bigger than we expected, and there was a large wooden bridge that crossed it. The bridge was about 20 feet long and was big enough to let a truck go over it. My 2 friends and I decided to go under the bridge and check it out. As we were walking by the shoreline, we saw 2 headlights off in the distance moving towards the bridge, so we bolted underneath it and hid. We then heard the truck roll over our heads and to the other side. My friends and I chilled there for a while, just talking and throwing rocks in the water. It was about 8:30 at this time, and now it was pretty much pitch black. That's when we started to hear a slow rumble in the distance. The same truck had come back, and this time it was moving much slower. We stayed put under the bridge, stifling our laughter. Eventually, the truck moved over the bridge, but rather than going over to the other side, the truck stopped right on top of us. The only thing you could hear was the rushing water and the hum of the engine. Then, the door of the truck swung open, and out came a loud thump on top of the bridge. Then we heard a loud scream saying, "I know you're out there! I'm gonna find you!" I looked at my friends and they were both shaking in fear. This must have been the crazy property owner, and he seemed pissed that...
Question, why did they go there though? If the counselors said do not go to this man's house, so why he went over there? Why they went over there? That don't even make sense. So
we were on his land. He started screaming and saying he was going to hurt us if he finds us. We could see that he had a flashlight and he was swinging it around looking for us. We heard loud thumps as he walked around a little bit, calling out for us, and thank God he never went under the bridge. Eventually, it went silent, and it sounded as if he went back into his truck. I was too terrified to move. We sat there for about 10 minutes, and then my one friend, who we'll call Trevor, whispered in my ear, saying that we have to go. I gave him a quick nod, and in slow motion, we moved out from under the bridge. We started to army crawl on the shoreline of the river, and I remember looking behind me to see the top of the bridge. I saw a white Ford F-150. In the driver's seat was the man, staring right at me with a sinister smile, and he even gave me a little wave. At that moment, I screamed and ran. My friends saw me run and took off after me. I could hear screaming from behind us. I took a quick glance behind me and saw that he was chasing after us, and I couldn't quite make out the object in his hand, but it seemed to be a weapon of some sort. We ran into the forest and ducked behind a bush. It was pitch black in the forest, and we couldn't hear a thing. We sat there for a while, just shaking. The man never walked by us, and we never heard him. After we gathered our courage, we got up and walked back to camp, got into our tents, and tried to fall asleep. The next morning, we talked to the camp owner about the man that owned the property of the river. The camp owner said that he didn't know much about the man, but he knows that he has some mental problems and he'd been accused of assault. I am so happy that we were able to escape from underneath the bridge. I can't imagine what would have happened if he caught us.
I just got a question. Why did you went over there? That don't make sense. If he said if the camp owner sit there and said, "Do not go over there," why you went over there? Number two, I'm glad he didn't. I'm glad he didn't like chase y'all and catch one of y'all, cause that's crazy. But I'm gonna give that one a I'm gonna give that one a 6. It wasn't that scary enough. So let's go to this another video. It wasn't.
This happened to me at the beginning of this year, just after I lost my husband to meningitis. I had moved in with my father and taken a job at a local hotel. It was a nice, cushy job that wasn't very stressful, and it was also nice to me in my grief-stricken state. The job was the night shift front desk manager position. So I was watching scary movies or listening to creepy podcasts that seemed to help keep me awake. My husband had never liked scary things like I did, so it was nice getting back to something that was mine. Being the night worker, I was always by myself during my shift. The hotel was new, so it wasn't creepy to be by myself, especially since there was always someone around as far as guests went, and on top of that, my boss was always a phone call away. I knew I'd have backup if needed. Anyway, it was a night like any other. I was in the back office behind the desk, watching the cameras and listening to a podcast while twirling a pen around, waiting for hours to tick away. The hotel was pretty empty, so I felt more alone than usual. I looked down at my phone as my podcast ended and went to pick another one when I noticed movement outside the building on the cameras. A guest was walking in. I hadn't seen a car pull in from the driveway camera, but I chalked it up to me just not paying attention and went to the desk. The man walked in and I quickly noticed his clothes were dirty, tattered, and that he had this odd smell to him. Metallic smelling. I shook off the weird feeling and looked up at his face before greeting him. And I noticed that his eyes weren't on me, but the wall behind, just above me. I followed his gaze, wondering what he could be looking at, but there wasn't anything there. I was confused, but thought maybe he was lost in thought. I greeted him again, but his gaze still remained on the wall. I was starting to get freaked out, but kept my cool and cleared my throat. "Sir, is there something I can help you with?" I asked more firmly. Quickly, his eyes flicked down, and those eyes were wide and crazy looking. It startled me enough that I took a small step back. His previously blank expression grew into that of a crazed, wide smile. He was missing teeth, and the second his lips parted, I could smell his rotten breath. It made my stomach...
I gotta check on my teeth, goddamn. Goddamn, what happened to his teeth? God damn.
churn. Before I could open my mouth, I watched his eyes slowly creep up and down my body, as if he were undressing me with his eyes. Then his eyes moved to my hand, and his smile faded into a hate-filled glare. His eyes were on my wedding ring. Well, yes, I still wore it, as I wasn't ready to give it up yet. "What the heck is that?" he asked, his voice thick and gruff and full of anger. "My wedding ring, sir. I'm married," I said, thinking maybe he was drunk. His glare got worse as his eyes met mine again. "Married? You lying bitch! You never told me you were married! You lied to me!" "Sir, I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm afraid that I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I was so scared at that moment, but tried desperately not to cry. He was still shouting at me. "So you're kicking me out of my own home? You're a little hussy. I'm taking what's owed to me. Get over here. He reached across the counter to try and grab me, and I let out a scream, stumbled back, tripping over my long skirt. I crawled quickly for the office door as he rushed to the counter. He grabbed my shirt, tearing it down the back as I went to slam the door shut, and I slammed it on his hand, making him scream in pain as I heard the bones break. As he let me go, I managed to finally shut and lock it before going into my boss's office. And as I dialed 911, I could hear him screaming at the office door, kicking as hard as he could to get it open. The operator stayed on the phone with me until the cops arrived. It took 3 grown officers and a taser gun to take him down and get him in the car. When everything was safe, I was sat down for a statement, and my boss and father were called. As my father was getting me into his truck, I heard an officer say that the man was a highly wanted man from Florida who had escaped a psychiatric facility. After he escaped the facility, he went looking for young brunette girls who were heavyset like me, or rather like his late wife. He had killed her and cut out her eyes and breasts, and done the same to 2 other girls in Alabama, so I could only guess he planned to do the same to me. Thank God for strong deadbolts and all of the police officers.
Wow. That's crazy. Now, I'm still trying to figure out if he tried to reach, why? I know some hotels got like a taser. It just tased the people, whoever is crazy like that. But I'm gonna give that one a 3, because it wasn't that scary. It was like, but on another video. Alright, let's go.
It was November of 2006. I was a 16-year-old kid living in the town of Altoona, Iowa. I went to bed early one night because I had to work the early shift at McDonald's. As I slept, I had a dream that I was running through downtown Des Moines, but I wasn't on a jog. I was running from something. As I ran around the corner of a building, I came face to face with my pursuer. A tall man wearing a trench coat and a top hat stood in front.
Oh my God, he got owl eyes. Imagine that. It's like an owl just looking at you like, holy shit.
Of me. The only thing visible of his face was his eyes. They were abnormally large with black pupils, and it looked at me as if it wanted something. After what felt like hours, he reached out his bony hand, as if he wanted me to go with him. I woke up violently from my dream, and after catching my breath, I peered around my room to see if I was safe. As I stood up from my bed, I noticed that I could see my breath. Feeling confused, I checked my window. It was latched shut. I then walked over and checked my vent. I could still feel warm air coming from it. As I sat back down on my bed, I tried to figure out what exactly was going on. That's when the figure from my dream appeared at the foot of my bed.
Oh, I thought that was a dream. That shit was real. Who the fuck on? That scared a little bit. That scared a little bit. Oh God. Holy shit. I thought that was a dream. That was real. Hell no.
I scrambled back to my headboard.
If I see that shit, I'ma be bouncing, run as hell.
What do you want? I asked, trying to hide the shakiness in my voice. With the same bony finger, it pointed at me. Growing up in a religious home, I believed what I was looking at was a demon. I told the creature to leave. It just waved its finger at me, and with a low voice, it spoke to me. Never leave. Always here. The creature then screamed loudly and disappeared. A feeling of nausea came over me, and I vomited on my floor. The last thing I remember was cleaning myself up and waking up to my alarm.
That's nasty.
It's been about a month since I had seen the top hat wearing man in my bedroom. The Christmas season was in full effect. My parents weren't home because they got invited to some kind of event, so it was only me and my 3 sisters at home. I had to wake up early in the morning for work, so I decided to go to sleep. I rested my head on my pillow and closed my eyes. Not even 30 seconds passed until my sisters burst into my room and started singing obnoxious songs. This, of course, made me very angry, but I thought if I ignored them that they would leave me alone. This was not the case. As I pulled the blankets over my head, I started to feel the same cold feeling that I had in November. As the obnoxious singing subsided, I lowered the blanket below my eyes and saw the man standing in the corner of my room. In one swift motion, he charged towards me, and I blacked.
Oh, I didn't know he can move that fast. Damn. I don't know why I paused this like that. Holy shit. He looked like off a Thriller. Look like Michael Jackson back dances. Holy shit.
Out. When I finally came to, I found that my sisters had locked themselves inside the bathroom. As I knocked on the door, they told me to go away. I asked them what happened, and all they could say was Mom and Dad were on their way home. I looked down and saw that my hand was slightly bloody. Holes were in the bathroom door, and a broom was sticking out of the wall. I then walked into the living room and found that there were knives stuck into the wall as well. The same wave of nausea passed over me, just like in November, and I threw up again. As I was cleaning up, my parents walked through the door. My father immediately walked over to me and gave me a good beating. Then he sent me to my room. I went to bed crying, not from the beating. I was crying because of the confusion. I had no idea what was going on. The next morning, my sisters reluctantly sat next to me and told me what had happened. They said I got angry and chased them down and tried to hurt them. They said my eyes were red to the point where they thought I was bleeding from them. They said I sounded like a different person. In 2011, that was the last time I saw the top hat wearing man. I just moved into a new apartment, and after a long, stressful day of unpacking, I took a shower and got ready for bed. As I started to drift off, I could feel that cold feeling again. I lifted my head and saw the man standing in front of me.
He got red eyes.
The man's
He got red eyes.
eyes were red now. With a low voice, just like on that November night, it looked at me and said, "Never leave. Always here."
Whoa. That's crazy. Imagine your son just takes you with a knife and he got red eyes like that. That's crazy. I'm gonna give that. It was kind of scary a little bit, so I'm gonna give that a 9. But that's crazy. Imagine that somebody standing in your room like that and you thought it was a dream. That is crazy. Holy crap. Well, on to the next video. Let's begin.
Back in high school, I took a mysteries and mythology type class, or something like that. I don't remember the name of the class. It basically just had to do with real life mysteries and creepy shit. I was into that kind of stuff. I was taking the class with a good friend, who I'll call Ben for this story. The teacher of the class took us on a field trip to a nearby abandoned village with an unknown
It
past.
was kind of creepy.
The village was built in the early 1900s, but seems as though it had been quickly abandoned shortly after it was built. The bus ride there was about 20 minutes. All of us were glued to the bus windows as we pulled up some sketchy-looking, decrepit road cutting through dense forest. The road eventually led to a clearing. We were there. We stepped out onto the road, which had grass growing through the cracks. The grass surrounding was almost knee-high. Then there were the buildings. The tall, archaic brick buildings with the boarded-up windows all gave off such chilling vibes. The teacher lined all 20 of us up, counted heads, and then began leading the way. The point of this little field trip was to use the so-called skills we learned in class to see if we could put anything together about why the village may have been abandoned so long ago. Some of the buildings had holes in the walls to serve as entryways. There were even holes in the ground next to some of the buildings, seemingly dug to get into the basements of some of the buildings, which seemed creepy. There was one building, though. It stood taller than any of the others. It just intrigued me the most. While the teacher was leading the group towards the village church, Ben and I decided to sneak off on our own to look for anything interesting. When we walked off in the direction...
Hold up. That is a red flag. Why you separate that? Why y'all left the... That's stupid. That's literally stupid. You left, and y'all just left from the teacher and stuff, so y'all can go do whatever. That's stupid. But let's keep
the
going.
Tallest building. We saw a hole in the ground. It was dug by the back door of the building, which had been sealed off. In the hole was a ladder, which led down to the concrete floor below. We both looked at each other and knew we had to do it.
If it was a black kid and he saw that, he'd be like, oh, hell nah. I'm out, and just walk away and just leave them too. Because I know nobody won't do that.
Ben climbed down first, then me. Luckily, this was just around the time Apple started putting flashlights on their phones, so we had a source of light. It was creepy down there. There were a couple of beer bottles, one graffiti tag on the wall, and dusty wooden planks everywhere. There was a wooden stairway which led up to complete darkness, since all windows and doors had been sealed shut from above. We had already gone as far as to enter the building, so we figured we'd go up the stairs too. I went first, and with each step, the creakiness of the 100-year-old wood made me feel as if I was going to fall through each and every step. Ben followed suit. This floor of the building was very tight. It seemed like there were many openings going off into different, smaller rooms. It was so dark in there, you would never even guess it was daytime. Ben and I were honestly starting to get creeped out in there, and agreed to go back outside. But just then, there was a noise in one of the tiny rooms, like a big rock hitting the concrete floor. A normal instinct would be to run, but Ben and I froze, locked eyes for a moment, then both tiptoed over to the opening of the room. We shined the lights into the room, and ran. We ran back down the stairs and then up the rusty ladder back outside. We caught up to the group out of breath. We didn't say anything, though, to avoid getting in trouble. One of our classmates asked us what was wrong. We told him we snuck into one of the buildings, and in one of the rooms, when we shined the light into it, we saw 3 guys standing maybe 10 feet away from the doorway, facing Ben and I in a weird formation, as if they were waiting for us. As we continued following the group, we paid extra attention to the tall building we entered from the distance. And before leaving, we saw a person's face at one of the higher level windows that had not been boarded up. We never told the teacher in fear of getting in trouble. We didn't know what to think. Were those just homeless people living in there? Were they gang members in hiding? Ben freaks me out with his theory. He says they were ghosts of the people who once lived in the town. Still, the way the 3 guys were just hauntingly standing there so calmly, staring at us the moment we peeked our heads through that doorway, I still can't get that image out of my head. I may go back to that village one day, just to prove Ben's idea wrong.
Okay, it's stupid if he went back there. That's dumb. If you see three guys just in the shadow looking at the doorway waiting for y'all, I'm happy y'all ran. But that was stupid you went back. But I'm gonna get this. Wow, I'm gonna give this a. It wasn't that scary. I'm gonna get that a 1 because it wasn't that scary, but it was stupid though. It's stupid. On to the another video, the last video. Let's begin.
It was approaching the end of summer, and my friends and I wanted to do some cool, mischievous things before going back to school. So, we had the genius idea one night to sneak into a nearby community pool. It was actually only a couple blocks away. It's right smack in the middle of a residential area, so instead of sitting on a main road or something, it actually just sat around a bunch of houses on a quiet road. During a hot day, the little parking lot would be full and the spot would be bustling. But at 1 in the morning, the place was of course dead.
Ooh.
There's obviously a big fence surrounding the whole front entrance, as well as a cage that gets closed up when the place closes. So our best way was to get in through the side. We snuck into the backyard of a neighboring house and hopped the fence over to the pool. It was as easy as that. The four of us took off our shirts and jumped into the pool, which in retrospect wasn't smart, since any of the neighbors could have heard the splashes and just called the police. But we were dumb high schoolers. It was very, very dark within that whole enclosing. This pool had no lights, which is why it closed at sunset. James, Courtney, and Alyssa were on the other side of the pool, as I was just kind of doing my own thing at first, swimming around and getting my face wet. I saw Alyssa get out of the pool shortly after and run away. I swam over to see what was going on. She was just going to the water fountain, though. The three of us just bopped around in the water for a bit, and eventually we heard Alyssa jump back into the pool from the other side. It was too dark to see much more than her black hair covering her face.
Ooh.
But just then we heard Alyssa playfully call something to us as she was walking back to the pool. The three of us in the pool looked at each other. I know they were doing the same thing as me, counting heads. There were three of us on this side of the pool, and here came Alyssa walking over to our side. So who was that on the other side?
Who the fuck is that? That's scary. Oh, that's the Grudge? Holy shit.
Alyssa got in, but the three of us were distracted, looking at the head bopping around the water across the pool. James said across the pool, "Who is that?" Not even 2 seconds later, the head went underwater and disappeared from view. We took this time to whisper to each other, mostly things like, what should we do? What if that's security? And should we run? Suddenly I felt something grab my leg with force and tried pulling me down into the water. I kicked, splashed, and yelled for help. James came over to pull me out of the pool, while the girls were already running for it, screaming. It wasn't until I got to the stairs of the pool that the grip on my leg was released and I was free. We hopped the same fence we climbed over to get in and ran all the way back to Alyssa's house. I was convinced that whoever that was a security guard. That is, until they literally tried to pull me under the water. We don't know what to think. There are a few possibilities. Maybe it was just another kid messing with us, maybe it was a security guard who went way too far, or most likely, it was a dangerous person who had ill intent.
Oh God. Imagine that. That's crazy. You swimming in the night. In the night though. What the hell? That's stupid right there. But I'm gonna give that one a it was kind of scary, so I'm gonna give that one a 7. But alright, I hope y'all like this video. Please comment down below. Thumbs up if y'all like the video. Okay, bye.